Hope everyone is having a good morning up to this point. It is 12:39 at that point. That is not morning. I suppose it's morning somewhere, but it's all blurring for me. Nevertheless, let's do the news. I may have tentative good news, I guess. Again, a lot of this oftentimes, what does it mean? And trying to discern what does it mean while missing a lot of pieces. Meaning there's always pieces to the puzzle of life per se, especially to events to which we are kind of looking through this filter while miles away in the middle of a rainstorm while being somewhat blind in one eye. I guess I'm making the point that it's hard to figure out what it actually means when we're not necessarily privy to the conversations of what it means. We're stuck looking at what takes place kind of at a higher level of objective reality and kind of trying to discern what it means based on what's taking place. In our case, one of the big bombshell stories that just came out, maybe a day ago if I'm not mistaken, was that Ecuador was going to expel Julian Assange from the embassy within hours to days. Now you can imagine people who support Assange and who look at him as being somewhat of a heroic figure, myself included, for withstanding that level of you can say the solitary confinement or the confinement in the embassy for all those years. For all intents and purposes, it's a prison cell, even though it's not necessarily considered a prison cell. But to hear that he was going to be expelled, which means that he was at some point going to be turned over to the United States, because Britain is essentially a colony of the United States or a client state of the United States. That's not good news. In fact, that is disturbingly bad news. And, I feel some kind of way about it. And I'd imagine all of the people who look to these cases and look at these stories and follow these stories feel some kind of way about it. They don't want him captured. They want him released. They have no right to hold him in that embassy. And I know he's staying in the embassy, but they have no right to prosecute him in this way. So another story, however, came out. And I'm going to give a shout out to HB because he pointed me in the direction. He's a subscriber of mine. He sends links to stories that come up. He pointed me out to this. He kind of sent one email and said, this is depressing. And then later on says, here's a little bit of hope. And the email essentially boiled down to, or the article essentially boils down to, Ecuador is denying the decision to eject Julian Assange. They're saying that those reports weren't necessarily true, that the decision hadn't been made yet. It's a few ways to think about this, right? Either this story was put out there kind of as a trial balloon, meaning we're leaking this because we want to see how the public responds to this. And, it's like gauge decisions after the fact, and you can either deny the story or go along with the story. If not, the trial balloon effect, is it possible that it was leaked? And after it was leaked, people kind of recoiled from the fact that it was leaked, meaning you've brought this into the light of day, and the fact that you brought this into the light of day makes us recoil because this is not something that we wanted in the light of day. Or, it's hard to know what is taking place here. Is it possible that high-level officials within Ecuador got it wrong? And if they did get it wrong, there were apparently multiple sources that got it wrong, because one story came out, then there was another story that came out to corroborate the first story. So I have no idea what's taking place. For all I know, they could be lying and still have those plans to try to go and expel Julian Assange from the embassy. The pretext that they're using for this is he's trying to accuse WikiLeaks of intercepting his communications. He is in the middle of a big scandal, some kind of corruption scandal, and he's trying to cover himself using Julian Assange as this kind of punching bag, this kind of media political chum to throw in the waters in order to fill up the space so it's not necessarily occupied with him and his corruption. It is a dangerous thing, man, for him to be in that embassy, because for the most part he's surrounded by his by his enemies, and the fig leaf of law that he's using in order to keep himself to some degree safe may be a fleeting thing. So, just saying. Oh, by the way, AOC gave a shout out to Chelsea Manning in this kind of argument about whistleblowers. Maybe I should do that video. Yeah, I do that video. All right. I'm not going to keep this one long. I just wanted this one to be somewhat of an update to give people what heads up on what's going on. Ecuador is denying that they are going to send or that they're going to expel Julian Assange from the embassy. Julian Assange has been accused, or he's accusing WikiLeaks of intercepting his communications and putting out information on social media about him and stirring up these events in regards to the controversy around his dealings with the other company. And I'm trying to think, is there anything else? I think that's it. All right, guys. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon. By the way, we're still doing the Patron Appreciation episode, 1 p.m. on Sunday. Mrs. Thomas has been up for the past few days. She has no excuses. And just so you know, Patron Appreciation, that episode each week goes to the patrons. It's usually a really good time. It's kind of a more laid-back episode, and people tend to love it. We tend to get pretty big crowds at that on that episode. So I will leave it here. Thanks all, and I'll see you guys probably in about 30 minutes or so. Have a good one.